mothership. I'm harder than a consonant, and that's because I'm flyer than the mothership. You ostrich, I'm awesome rich. Call a bitch, fresher than my lozenges. The problem is you in the danger zone like Kenny Loggins is. I'm fly, I'm tight, they say I'm sick. They right, you think you good.
Today is January 6th, 2012, and the time is 18:19. And I want to discuss the issue with Rick Santorum and what he said before the Iowa caucuses. And before I get into that, I just want to also say that I don't think it's a coincidence that the three of the bigger candidates in Gingrich, Romney, and Santorum right before the caucuses, they all had something to say about minorities and blacks and how, something of that sort. They all had to speak about race, which isn't surprising. But more specifically, Rick Santorum said that, I want to give blacks the opportunity to work. I don't want them to take food stamps. I want them to earn their living. Now, why would he go out and say this? Like that, you might be sitting there and be like, that's something, I agree with that, such and such, and me personally, I agree with that too. I don't want anybody on food stamps. I don't want anybody relying on the government for anything. But what I do want is a safety net for people. But that's besides the point. Again, going back to Santorum, it's like, it makes me think, it's like, was there some kind of influx or some boom in the amount of blacks applying for food stamps, or, and the amount of blacks leading to, the debt of this country or something? Like why is this being brought up? And the simple reason is because there are the people in Iowa that Romney or that Santorum wants, the people in Iowa. Well, let me rephrase it like this. There are people in Iowa who agree with the idea that blacks are destroying the system, that blacks are asking for too much money, and that blacks don't know how to work hard, that blacks don't know how to earn anything. There are people who think like this, and those people typically vote Republican. And so Rick Santorum has no problem grabbing that vote. Now, let me be clear. This doesn't mean that Santorum is a racist. I don't like throwing around that word. I think it should be thrown around less, and I think that people should use it, sparingly and, based on a set of circumstances, But I still think that he's a race baiter. Yes, he is definitely a race baiter, because if you look at the statistics, there are more white people on food stamps and housing programs than any other race, because for the simple fact that there are more white people in the United States. But you don't hear Rick Santorum saying that about white people. So why is he saying it about black people? Of course, I already explained it. He's a race baiter, and he's trying to get those votes. And it might have worked out in the end, 8 votes. I'm sure there are 8 people who believe in that, and who were swayed because of what Santorum said, Senator Santorum said. But this gets to the larger issue. The larger issue I think this gets to is what's going on globally. You're not going to find this in the mainstream media, whether it's New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, Fox, whatever, MSNBC. You're not going to find it on there because they don't want to talk about it. But, what people are upset right now. Look at Occupy Wall Street. Occupy has taken over the world, basically. There's an Occupy protest on every continent, nearly every country. Nigeria is now, they're now getting ready to have their protest, and, things are getting heated. People are getting upset. And I think the reason why people are upset, a lot of people don't realize what's going on, but they know something's going on. And the Tea Party, too. The Tea Party believes in this, too. And I think that what we can look at is we can look at, the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated investment banks, commercial banks, and insurance firms, kept that money, somewhat separate, and had some kind of regulations on the trading that was allowed to be done between, money that the banks weren't even invested in. Then you had, the repeal of that, which was the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which was passed unanimously, basically. You have the National Defense Authorization Act that's just been passed. You have Citizens United, which allows, basically says the corporations are people, sets a precedent to allow unlimited amounts of money to be donated to a campaign. You have all of these things going on. And if you look at it, the politicians, they vote for all of these things, together. The people on the left and right that are supposed to hate each other, they'll vote for all of this legislation together unanimously. But when it comes to the wedge issues like gay rights and stuff, rights, issues that bring up a lot of, emotion, then the Republicans and the Democrats are sure to vote differently on that. They're sure to make sure that, they're going to make sure that they're divisive in that. So to get back to my original point, it's that the politicians work together on what works, on what they know that the big issues are. They'll work together and they'll get that passed. But the small issues, like when it comes to race and all that stuff, they make sure that they keep us separate. They make sure that they keep us fighting against each other so that we can't recognize the real problem going on. And the real problem going on is that, NAFTA and the trade agreement is shipping jobs overseas, basically meaning that the middle class and basically the American working class has to compete with people overseas who are much poorer than us. So there's no way we can compete with that, because if we do, what a libertarian would want, they say, let the market do whatever, let the market rule everything. Well, if the market rules everything, that means that people in America are going to have to start asking for $2, working wages. We've seen our wages decrease the past 2 years. We've seen inflation in the past 30 years through the roof. We've seen all this stuff happening. We're working harder. We're getting less pay. And that's with all that stuff that I named, Graham Leach, Biley, NAFTA, the National Defense Authorization Act, Citizens United, all this stuff it's been a long ways in the working, the Patriot Act, and it's led up to this, and that's why people are getting mad. But people can't recognize, because they listen to their politicians for everything, but the only reason that they're there is to do the bidding of the elite who want to make sure that we stay separated and we stay fighting amongst ourselves. For instance, we have issues with the Tea Party, who doesn't like big government, and Occupy Wall Street, who also doesn't like big government. Occupy Wall Street wants to get rid of the influence of money in politics and the influence of money on the government, thus leading to big government. But yet the two can't decide, on what they want to move forward with. But I'm sure that both sides would want to get money out of politics. I'm sure both sides care about the Constitution, and the Constitution says nothing about corporations having, being treated as humans. So there's definitely stuff that we can get behind, and I think that needs to be the issue, and I think that needs to be what we need to focus on going into 2012. And we need to stay away from this race baiting and all this nonsense, and we need to call out, whether you're on the left or the right, whether you're black or white, Hispanic, I don't care. If you hear something, that is pulling us apart, we need to call it out, because these are some difficult times, and we can't sit here and allow men to pull this country apart. We have to start counteracting, like Martin Luther King said, that, when people are bombing and blowing stuff up, good men need to get together and start building. And that's what we need to do going into 2012. And that's what I'm going to make sure that I keep expressing. So thanks for listening. I'll holler at you guys tomorrow. Happy Friday, and everybody be safe, and God bless.